Okay, so I'm gonna make a video to again walk you through some methods to factor depending on how the problem is presented to you. And the first case, we're gonna look at when the leading coefficient, that's what it means, LC, leading coefficient. And the leading coefficient is always the coefficient of the highest degree in a polynomial and standard form, okay? So in this case, it's 1. You see, and remember, in visible math, the 1 is understood, okay? So there's many ways to do this. Now, as a 10th grader, or even 11th grader, because this video will also be used for my pre-calc classes, you are expected to be doing this in your head. You are expected to put your y equals, put your two parentheses, and ask yourselves what multiplies to negative 11 and what's at the same time as to negative 10. So for a way to help you with this, get the factors, in this case, very, very short lists of factors of 11, right? So what the only possibility that you have is 1 times 11. Now my 11 is negative. So I need to find out which one has to be negative. So if you add 1 plus 11, you'll get negative 10. So the only way that this can happen is that you have negative 11 plus positive 1. Okay, so you found your two values, minus 11 here, plus 1 here. Some of you can still use the box if you want, undoing the box, meaning finding the values of the sides of the box. So you can put your x, x squared goes here, hence x times x, and the negative 11 is here. The two middle, I'm going to use a different color to be able to, again, explain that. The two middle boxes, the two middle boxes are added into this middle term here. Wait, I'm just going to, sorry. Okay, into this term here in the middle. So I know that this box and this box added together gives me negative 10. So I can use the same thinking that I was before. And you can be like, okay, what multiplies to negative 11 and adds to negative 10? I know it's negative 11 times positive 1. Now, if you want to get the extra step in there, let me erase this. But again, you should not be using any of that stuff. You should not. You should be able to do this in your head. The next case, I'm not expecting you to, but the last two, yes. So this is just factoring. Now, if I'm asking you to solve, meaning finding the x-intercepts on your graph, where does that parabola touch your x-axis? You just have to remember, in order to solve, you always have to make your equation equals 0 here. We do it intuitively, but be careful with intuition, because if you end up having a coefficient in front of either this x or this one, well, then you have to actually solve for 0. In this case, it's easy. You're just going to go x minus 11 equals 0. Let's leave x alone. Plus 11 plus 11. X equals positive 11. So my parabola crosses the x-axis at positive 11. And it also crosses your x-axis at, look, minus 1, minus what? So you can do this one, like I said, intuitively, no problem. Just change the sign of both. And that's the reason why it works. You make it equal 0 and you solve each parentheses or each terms, right? Each factor solved to 0. So next case is probably the hardest one. When you have a leading coefficient that is not 1. So in this case, we're going to use, I call it the diamond method, but you can, diamond method. There's other ways to do that, but that's the one I find the easiest to use. So first of all, you make your two x's here. Sorry, two lines, your x. And here you are you at the top you do a times c, and at the bottom you put your b. So a times c here is negative 30, and b is negative 7. So you need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 30 and adds to negative 7. So you can use the same trick I used on the page before. Disregard the signs for now and just lay out the factors of 30. So 1 times 30, 2 times 15, 3 times 10. And whoops, I'm going to stop here because I'll be like, wait a minute. I'm almost positive that there's a way to organize 3 and 10 to be added into negative 7, putting a sign, right, onto one of the two. And so I know that 10 times 3, I know it's going to be a 10 and a 3 here, but which one will be negative? The one that will make this addition, 10 and 3 together, as a negative 7, which will be negative 10. So once I found those two numbers, I'm not done. I'm going to set it up, x minus 10 and x plus 3. And now you can't forget the last step. The most important step is to grab your leading coefficient and divide it under both 6 and 6. Now, okay, I redid this part, so it might sound weird that I cut the video, but at this point we are here. So the next step, you're going to simplify your fraction here. Simplify. If you can't divide it, at least you have to simplify. So x minus 5 over 3, and here x plus 1/2. Now listen to this, very important. If the goal of this problem is just to solve, they say solve by factoring, it means that you can stop there. If I want just a factor, if I say just factor this expression, then yes, there's a step extra, which we'll do after. But if they ask you to just solve right now, remember what we did the page before. How do we solve each parentheses to 0? You just make it equal each of them, each factors, right, equal to 0. So you can add 5/3 on both sides. You get x equals 5/3. And then you get x plus 1/2 equals 0. X equals negative 1/2. So these are the x-intercepts. That's when I ask you to solve by factoring, finding the x-intercepts, the x-intercepts. But if you're asked to purely factor without solving, well, then you have to kind of go back to this step here. And the last thing you have to do is take that the denominator, the fraction you get here, and put it as a coefficient of your x's in both parentheses, or just one, because it could have happened that one of those division was a whole number. Okay, so your final answer would be 3x minus 5 equal and 2x plus 1. So this is my factored form of this. But if you're asked to solve, you could. I mean, it doesn't matter if you do it from this step, but you can also just remember to stop here. You already have your factors there, because look what happens here. You make your two parentheses, right, equals 0. So equals 0. You add 5 plus 5. 3x equals 5. X equals 5 over 3. Look, we already have found the 5 over 3 here. And same goes with the other one, okay? So just always know and know what you're trying to find. This is going to be very useful. Okay, my two special cases in the next pages. Minus 7x minus 5. Special case number 1. You see, you don't have the c, that factor there, that term there, that kind of gets in the way when you're trying to factor. So in this case, actually, when you see equations like these, you should be happy. But most of you just get really stuck. So really what's going on here, you can factor out here, you're going to factor out the GCF, which is something you cannot be doing. Oh, I forgot to tell you something about the page before. I'll get back to this before we go. You should always try to factor the GCF. Always, always, always. And that's something I didn't tell you before. The equation, I think, was 6x squared minus 7x minus 5. So the first thing before using the diamond method, you always try to factor out the leading coefficient. If you can't factor it out, then you use the diamond method, okay? Like we did on the page before. But look here. What a GCF first. Can you divide both expressions by 3? Yes, I can. No problem. But look also, they have something else in common. Remember that the GCF is not just a random factor, is the greatest common factor between those two expressions. And not only you can divide both by 3, but you can also divide by x. So you can take a 3x in both of those. So you're left with y equals 3x. So 3x squared divided by 3x is x. And 6x divided by 3x is 2. Now that's the one that you guys get really confused with. These are the two factors. This is a factor, this is a factor. By the way, this is a scale factor, okay? It's not part, it does not affect the position of the zeros, remember that. Now, to find your two x-intercepts, if you're asked to solve, this is factoring. Now to solve, remember you have to make your equation equals 0, and you solve both parentheses to 0, or to do both factors to 0. So 3x equals 0 divided by 3x equals 0. It goes through the origin. And this one is x equals negative 2. My two factors are the following. X equals 0 and x equals negative 2. It's a special case. This passes through the 0, 0, the origin, because look, you don't have anything here. Okay. Okay, my last case is very similar to the last one, but instead of being a second degree, it's a third degree. Just notice that here, again, you don't have a constant term. So there's a very easy way to deal with this. I know it's a little scary visually, but again, let's find your GCF. What's my GCF between those three terms? I know for a fact I can divide all of these by 4. And also they all have at least an x. So let's take an x away from them. So you're going to end up with y equals 4x and be like x squared minus 5x plus 6. And then you should just remember what we did on the first slide. The 4x is still there. This is still a factor. It just means it's at 0. Remember, you have at least one of the x. It's x equals 0. Do not forget it. And I'm highly suggest that when you or recommend when you're doing some of those, if you get a factor that's x by itself, don't forget, just write it on the side. You know you already have one of the x-intercepts, which happens to be the origin. Okay, and let's factor the other ones. What multiplies to positive 6 and adds to negative 5? By now, you guys should be very comfortable with factoring like this. Negative 2 times negative 3 is positive 6, and negative 2 plus negative 3 is negative 5. So when you're asked to find the other factors, the other x-intercepts, you can write x equals 2 and x equals 3. This is a cubic function, guys. This is cubic. Here, look, there's x power of 3. So you know it's touching it has 3 solutions. If it has 3 solutions, some could repeat. You can have a few solutions that are imaginary, but it has to have 3 solutions. So if you end up with just 2 like this, you have to ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Okay? But I hope this helps.